everyone, welcome back to my channel. It's been a really long time since I posted on this YouTube channel. I feel like I always say that at the beginning of my YouTube videos, but today we'll be discussing a topic that I really have been wanting to make a video on, which is applying to medical schools in Canada as a third-year undergraduate student. So if you weren't already aware, in Canada, you are able to apply to medical school in your third year of university. So that would mean that you are not in your final year of your undergraduate degree, and you would potentially, if you are accepted, skip the last year of your undergraduate degree and go directly into medical school. For most of us who are enrolled in four-year bachelor's degree programs, that would mean that you would not receive your bachelor's degree by the time that you enter medical school. So you would not have a bachelor's of science or whatever program that you're studying, and instead you would only have the MD, which is the medical school degree. So there are actually quite a few Canadian medical schools that do accept undergraduate students with no degrees. Notably, some of the ones that I applied to this year were the University of Calgary in Alberta, the University of British Columbia, and Queen's University, as well as the University of Toronto, which are both in Ontario. So like I mentioned, this pathway is for someone who is very set on applying to medical school, and if you are looking to potentially save an entire year, this could be a great option. So I really wanted to share it with you all. However, I do realize that there are quite a few pros and cons to taking this path, and so that's why I just wanted to share my insights with you all and help you make a decision for yourself. First, starting with the pros, one of the biggest pros that I see with applying to medical school as a third year is the chance to learn from your mistakes and gain valuable experience that you can build on top of when you are applying for the second time in the fourth year of your bachelor's degree. So as a third year student, I do have to say that I was pretty lost and confused this time around when I was applying to medical school. I felt a bit rushed as I was applying because I just felt like I didn't know what I had signed up for when I had first decided to apply this year. But I know that if I am not accepted this application cycle, I do have a lot more experience that I can build off of when I'm applying next year in my fourth year of undergrad. And so it gives me a little bit more solace, I would say, to know that it is not the end of the world if I am not accepted this year, although it would be amazing, and that's what all of us are definitely hoping to achieve. Again, I know that I have the choice to finish out my bachelor's degree and apply again with all of the tools that I've gained under my belt and try to enter medical school without having to complete a graduate program like a master's or taking a gap year. The second pro that I see is that the pathway to medicine, to becoming a fully licensed physician, is very long. Normally you have to finish a bachelor's degree that is about 4 years, and then you have to go to medical school and finish that, which is also usually another 4 years, and then you have 3 to 5 plus years of residency to finish up your training. So as you can tell, it is a very, very long path, and although 1 year can seem like not that much in the midst of all this training, I did think it would be great to relieve some of the financial pressure of having to pay for a full year of tuition and living costs at my current undergraduate program university. So yeah, with those two pros, I feel like I was ultimately motivated to try and apply this application cycle as a third year. Now with the cons. So as you can probably imagine, it is normally a bit harder for third year undergraduate students to be accepted into medical school, just because you have one less year than most of the other applicants to polish up your CV or resume, to gain a lot of experience and maturity, and also have one less year to strengthen your GPA if it's not at a place where you'd ultimately like it to be. So with all those factors combined, it is a little bit harder for third years to apply and be accepted into medical school. Also, I do believe that third year is typically the hardest year for a lot of undergraduate students in terms of the workload. And so as a third year right now in microbiology and immunology at McGill, I do find that this is probably the hardest year in terms of the difficulty of courses I'm taking. And so it has been a little bit hard to manage all of the medical school applications on top of my extracurriculars, and also trying to stay on top of all of my academic responsibilities as well. So those are some of the pros and cons that crossed my mind when I was applying to medical school and deciding whether I wanted to apply as a third year applicant. The biggest piece of advice I have for any pre-med out there is to start planning as early as possible. I know that the timeline in terms of making your way through university and applying to medical school can seem really daunting and confusing at first. So I wanted to be very transparent with you guys and just share my timeline in terms of how I went through university and was able to apply in third year. So in my first year of university, I chose to become involved very deeply in 2 clubs at my university instead of trying to pursue tens of different clubs that I found here at McGill. And so I took first year as a foundation to build very strong academic habits, as I was a little bit of a procrastinator in high school, so I really wanted to kind of move away from that in my first year of university. So I would always do little review sessions at the end of each week, form study groups with my friends so that we could talk about any concepts that were difficult, and talk about some of the assignments that we had, and the quizzes that we had online as well. And throughout the middle of the year, I think I became involved in my first clinical research role. So it was really, really fascinating for me to be a part of a clinical setting and learn about how clinical research is carried out. So I was able to talk to patients directly, explain some of the research objectives of the projects, and gain informed consent, help them fill out questionnaires, that sort of thing. And then in my first year summer, I was able to find an internship in a wet lab over the summer. So I worked there full time and learned so much about wet lab research, like research techniques and experiments, as well as understand how important research actually is to the field of medicine and healthcare as a whole. So that was a really insightful experience that I'm really, really grateful I got to experience. And then at the start of my second year, I continued almost all actually of the experiences that I started in first year. So that includes like all of the clubs that I mentioned before, as well as the clinical research. I was continuing that, and then also the wet lab research from the summer before. So second year, I felt a little bit more comfortable in terms of all the different roles that I had, and I was starting to gain an understanding of how I would balance my academics and my extracurriculars. So second year did get harder, definitely, in terms of like the difficulty of the content that I was learning in class. So it was really important to kind of not miss class for me. I am a very go to every single lecture type of gal. Like, I know a lot of students in university actually don't go to any classes and choose to just watch the online recordings, and they do excel as well academically. So I would say it depends on the person, but for me, like, I would never have the self-motivation to force myself to watch lecture recordings every single day. And I really liked not feeling behind in any of my classes. So that really helped me in second year. And then this past summer, which was my second year summer, I was studying for the MCAT, which is a huge exam that you really do need to prepare a lot for. And it is required by most Canadian med schools. So I was studying for that, as well as doing some part-time work in a research lab, as well as a clinical setting. And I was continuing some work with my clubs as well, like planning for this year. And I wish that I had committed more time to writing my med school application essays during the summer, but I unfortunately did not have the time or energy to do that. So I just started planning them out in the summer and actually started writing them after my MCAT was over, which was in mid-August. So as soon as my MCAT was over, I was focusing on my med school applications, and I spent all of September, getting all of the necessary documents together, all of the necessary essays together in order to apply this application cycle. And now I am starting my reading break. It is currently the middle of midterm season, and I have 3 midterms as soon as I get back to school from this reading break. So I'm a little bit scared about that, but I am also writing my CASPER, which is another exam that is required by a few medical schools in Canada. And it's a situational judgment test where they place you in a bunch of scenarios and ask you how you would respond to some of these hard situations. And so that is in 2 days, which is crazy to believe, but yeah, that's kind of where I am right now. Definitely not the most perfect timeline, but I thought it might be helpful to any pre-meds out there to just see an example of a person who applied to medical school in their 3rd year. Also, I do want to mention that for most of the Canadian medical schools that you might apply to, they do invite you to touch on experiences and activities that you did throughout high school that were meaningful to you. So I think it's really important to remember that even as a high school student, your actions do matter and can make a huge impact in your community, as well as on you. Personally, for me, a lot of the extracurriculars and volunteering that I did in high school helped me determine a couple of interests and passions for myself that I used to guide the kinds of opportunities that I pursued in university as well. So medical schools really do value long-term commitment to certain values and passions. So let's say, for example, you're really passionate about volunteering at the senior home in your local community. You could look into joining a club that focuses on geriatric health, for example, in university, and doing research concerning geriatric health. That would show that you actually do care a lot about this subject and you have committed a lot of time and energy in terms of pursuing this interest of yours. And medical schools actually love to see this. So that is a huge tip that I have for any pre-meds just starting out in their journey. Try to pick out certain interests that you can develop throughout multiple years of your student career, instead of just having extracurriculars that don't have any relation to each other and are just scattered across a wide range of activities. I know I talked a lot about extracurriculars, so I really want to end off with a final note on how important your GPA is when you are trying to get into Canadian medical schools. I am a firm believer that GPA is king when it comes to Canadian medical schools, and they have very competitive GPAs for the average accepted class of their medical students as well. So I invite you to kind of look at some of those averages online and determine for yourself what you want your goal GPA to be. I think looking into this and setting goals early is really important for you to keep yourself accountable and determine your priorities from the get-go. This was also my very first time applying, so I was a little bit all over the place and I wasn't as organized as I wish I was. But, you know, we live and we learn. I will definitely continue to improve on some of these areas as I go on finishing my third year. And if I am, you know, unfortunately not accepted this time, I will ensure that I correct some of these mistakes in my next application cycle. So yeah, if you have any questions about applying to medical school, especially as a third year, feel free to leave them in the comments and I will try my best to answer them. So yeah, thank you for sticking around and watching this sit down video, and I'll see you in my next video. Bye.